I stared at my phone screen, my face circled in red like a target. The caption read, "If you could erase one person from your family, who would it be?" My daughter-in-law had posted it herself, tagging me for the world to laugh at. The comments came pouring in. Cruel jokes, heart emojis, laughing faces. Each one felt like a slap across my 63-year-old face. But I didn't comment. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because that post gave me the perfect idea for revenge. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because this story, it's not just about betrayal. It's about power and how one quiet mother learned that silence can be the loudest payback of all. Now, let me back up and tell you how it all began. My name is Ellen Smith, but everyone calls me Ellen. I'm 63 years old, retired, and I used to think family loyalty was the one thing you could never lose, no matter what. That was before my son married her, Vanessa. Vanessa came into our lives like a gust of perfume and manipulation. Pretty, polished, charming. The kind of woman who knew exactly what to say to make you doubt your own instincts. At first, I thought she was simply nervous, trying to impress her husband's mother. But over the years, it became clear that she didn't just want to fit in. She wanted to replace me. The small things started first, correcting me in front of guests, rearranging my kitchen when she visited, calling me Ellen instead of Mom in that sugary fake tone. And my son, Michael? He adored her too much to notice. He'd laugh it off. "Oh, Mom, you're reading too much into it," he'd say. Every time it cut a little deeper. Then, about 6 months ago, Michael and Vanessa moved into what everyone thought was their home. A charming colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. What they didn't know was that the deed, quietly, legally, was still in my name. Michael had struggled financially a few years back, and I'd helped him out with a temporary arrangement. They paid no rent, no mortgage, nothing. I'd just never mentioned that the house remained mine. I thought, what's the harm? They're family. Then came that Facebook post. I remember it vividly. It was a Thursday morning, just after I had finished watering my plants. My phone buzzed. A notification from my granddaughter, Lily, tagging me in something. I smiled, thinking it was another photo of her dance recital. It wasn't. It was that post. Vanessa's smug, filtered face. Her caption, "If you could erase one person from your family, who would it be? Be honest." And there, right below, my picture. Someone had cropped it from last Christmas. I was standing in front of the tree, wearing the sweater I'd knitted myself, smiling at my family. And now, that smile was being mocked by strangers. Hundreds of reactions, dozens of comments, some from people I didn't even know. "Oh, definitely the old one. She looks like she runs the HOA. One person even wrote, "That's the type of woman who hides your inheritance." I could feel my chest tighten. Not from embarrassment, from rage. Because it wasn't just cruelty. It was Vanessa showing off, showing everyone that she'd won the family. I called Michael immediately. He didn't answer. I texted, "Call me now." Nothing. Hours passed. By evening, my hands were trembling as I scrolled through the comments again. That's when Vanessa replied to one of them herself. She wrote, "Oh, don't worry, we're handling it." Winky face. Handling it. As if I were some problem to be erased. That's when I opened the file drawer in my study, the one I hadn't touched in years, and pulled out a thin manila envelope. Inside was the original deed to their home, signed, sealed, notarized, with my name in bold letters across the top. I stared at it for a long moment, and then I smiled. Because in one click, Vanessa had made the worst mistake of her life. She'd reminded me that power doesn't always come from youth, beauty, or social media followers. Sometimes it comes from paperwork. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through every legal document I owned, every note, every clause, every receipt that connected me to that house. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I was going to do. But first, I wanted her to know why. So, I posted my own picture. A picture of the same house, their house, with a caption that simply read, "The property you're living in isn't your husband's. It's mine. And I just voted to erase you from my guest list." Within minutes, Vanessa's post vanished from Facebook. Her friends stopped laughing, and my phone started buzzing non-stop. Michael called. Vanessa called. Even her mother tried. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and waited for the first text I knew would come. "Mom, what did you mean by your post?" I typed 3 simple words. "Check the deed." And that's when the fireworks began. Vanessa didn't call just once. She called 9 times that day. By the 10th, her voice cracked through my voicemail like static. "Ellen, this isn't funny. You can't just say you own our house online. You're embarrassing us. Please call me back." Embarrassing her? That was the word she used. Not hurting, not shocking. Embarrassing? The woman was more afraid of what people thought than what she'd done. By evening, Michael finally came over. He didn't knock, he barged in like a man on fire. His face was pale, sweat shining on his temples. "Mom, what's going on? Vanessa's freaking out. She said you're claiming the house is yours?" I didn't move from my chair. I just slid the manila envelope across the coffee table. "Not claiming," I said quietly, "confirming." He picked it up, the sound of paper rustling louder than our silence. His eyes darted across the words, the date, the notary stamp, my signature. And then the realization. You never transferred it," he whispered. I looked him dead in the eyes. "No, I didn't. You were struggling back then, remember? I paid for that home to help you, but legally it stayed under my name. You've been living there rent-free ever since." Michael's jaw clenched. I saw the anger and confusion flicker behind his eyes, the same eyes that used to look at me with love when he was a little boy. Now all I saw was a man torn between guilt and loyalty to his manipulative wife. "Vanessa didn't mean that post," he stammered. "It was a joke." "Was it? A joke? Tagging me as the person she'd erase? Inviting strangers to mock me online?" He said nothing. I leaned forward. "You know what hurt most, Michael? It wasn't her words. It was your silence. You didn't defend me. You didn't even call." He swallowed hard. I saw his lips tremble slightly, but before he could answer, his phone buzzed. Vanessa. Again. He looked at the screen, hesitated, then turned it face down. That's when I realized part of him knew she'd crossed the line. But still, I wasn't done. I said, "Tell Vanessa that she has 30 days to vacate my house." His head snapped up. "What? Mom, you can't do that." "Oh, but I can, and I will. 30 days, Michael, or I'll have a lawyer handle it." That night, I heard nothing from him again. No apology, no visit. Just silence. Until 2 weeks later, when I received a letter from Vanessa's attorney. Apparently, she was claiming that the property was gifted to her and Michael upon marriage, citing implied ownership through occupancy and upkeep. It was laughable, but infuriating. That's when I decided this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about respect. So I called an old friend, Margaret, a retired attorney who owed me a favor. She laughed when I told her the situation. "Classic narcissist," she said. "Don't worry, you'll win this. But if you want to make it hurt, I have an idea." Margaret's idea was genius. Instead of evicting them outright, we'd file a formal reclamation notice for breach of residency agreement, basically treating their stay like a broken lease. That meant not only could I reclaim the house, but I could also charge back rent for all the years they'd lived there without paying. When I told Vanessa, she nearly choked. "You're charging us rent for our own home?" I smiled sweetly through the phone. "No, dear. My home." The following weeks were deliciously quiet. Vanessa's social media went dark. The family chat was silent except for Lily's innocent messages about school and dance class. Even Michael stopped showing up for Sunday dinners. Until one day, he did. Alone. Looking smaller somehow. He sat at the table across from me, hands clasped tightly. "Mom, Vanessa's leaving me." I didn't react. I simply sipped my tea. "She said she can't live with all the humiliation. People at her work found out. Her friends keep asking why she got evicted by her mother-in-law. She's packing her stuff." "Then you'll finally have peace," I said softly. But Michael looked at me with tears in his eyes. "You don't get it. I loved her." I leaned back, watching him. "You loved her," I repeated quietly. "Even after she humiliated me publicly, after she mocked your own mother." He nodded slowly. Then he whispered, "Maybe I still do." That's when I realized something painful but freeing. I couldn't save him from her. He'd have to lose everything to see her for who she truly was. A month later, I officially reclaimed the house. Margaret handled the paperwork flawlessly. The sheriff posted the notice on their front door, and within 24 hours, Vanessa was gone. She left behind a mess. Empty wine bottles, clothes scattered everywhere, and a mirror in the master bedroom with lipstick scrawled across it. "Congrats, Ellen. You win." I stood there in that quiet, empty house, the home I'd once bought out of love, and felt nothing. Not joy, not guilt, just finality. But the real twist came weeks later, when Michael returned again, holding a folder. "Mom, I found something," he said, voice trembling. He handed it to me. Inside were screenshots, messages between Vanessa and her best friend, dated months before everything happened. In them, Vanessa bragged about her plan to make Michael sign the transfer papers without him realizing it. She even mocked my handwriting. That post, the one that humiliated me, wasn't random. It was part of her plan to push me over the edge, make me look unstable, and guilt Michael into finally giving her full ownership. It was premeditated cruelty. Michael broke down. He said he was sorry. He said he'd never forgive himself for choosing her side. And for the first time in months, I saw my son, not the man she'd molded. I didn't say,
I forgive you. I didn't need to. I just hugged him. Because in that moment, the revenge was complete. Not through money or property or humiliation, but through truth. As he left that night, I stood by the window, the same one where I'd once watered my plants, scrolling through Facebook like a fool. Now, the feed was quiet. Her account gone, her perfect life deleted. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It doesn't need fireworks or courtrooms. Sometimes it's just watching someone drown in the silence they created.
It had been 3 months since Vanessa left. 3 months since my house was silent again. No perfume clouding the hallway, no fake laughter bouncing off the walls, no passive-aggressive sighs when I'd walk into a room. I had peace. But peace is a strange thing. It's quiet, sometimes too quiet. And then, one rainy afternoon, I heard it. A knock. Soft, hesitant, like guilt itself was standing on my porch. When I opened the door, I froze. It was Vanessa. Her hair was limp, her clothes wrinkled, and her makeup streaked from the rain. She didn't look like the glamorous woman who once posted about erasing me. She looked human for the first time. "Ellen," she whispered, "please, I don't have anywhere else to go." I said nothing, just stared at her. "Michael's staying with a friend. I messed up. I thought I could handle things on my own." The old me, the woman who once cooked for her, who smiled through the insults for Michael's sake, would have opened the door. But that woman was gone. "Why are you here?" I asked flatly. "Because you were right," she said, voice shaking. "About everything. About me. I don't expect forgiveness. I need help." The words hung in the air, not because they were touching, but because I could tell she meant some of them, just not the right parts. So I stepped aside. 5 minutes, then you leave. Inside, she clutched her hands like a child caught stealing. She kept glancing around the house, the furniture, the pictures, the family memories she once mocked. "I didn't mean for it to get that bad," she murmured. "It started as a stupid joke. I never thought it'd—" I cut her off. "You didn't think it'd ruin your image, you mean?" She looked down. Guilty silence. Then she said something that almost made me laugh. "I miss being part of this family." The hypocrisy nearly choked me. "You miss the benefits, the comfort, the vacations, the appearance of a perfect life. You never wanted family, you wanted status." Her eyes flickered, because the truth always burns when it's finally spoken. "I lost everything, Ellen. My job, my friends, Michael. I know I deserve it, but please, I just need a place to stay, just for a few weeks." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said the most unexpected thing, something that surprised even me. "All right." Her head snapped up. "What?" I said. "You can stay, but on my terms." She nodded eagerly, relief flooding her face. "Anything, I promise." My terms were simple. No guests, no social media, no excuses. She would help around the house, contribute what little she could, and most importantly, she would treat me with respect. For the first few days, she was quiet, almost humble. She cooked, cleaned, even thanked me. It was surreal, like watching a villain pretend to be a saint. But on the 7th day, I saw the cracks. Late one night, I caught her in my office, scrolling through my emails. "Looking for something?" I asked from the doorway. She froze, guilt written all over her face. "I was just checking if there was mail for Michael," she stammered. "My inbox isn't the post office," I said sharply. She laughed awkwardly, then quickly shut the laptop. But I noticed something, the flash drive sticking out of the port. Vanessa wasn't just desperate. She was plotting again. So I played along.
I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I installed a small keystroke tracker and a camera near my desk. If she wanted to dig for secrets, she'd find more than she bargained for. And sure enough, 2 nights later, I caught her. She'd plugged in the drive again, copying files. Only this time, I'd left something special on the computer. A folder titled Inheritance Documents Final. When she opened it, she found a single file labeled Confidential. Inside, a fake legal document showing that I'd added her name to my estate, leaving her $2 million in assets. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. She took photos, copied everything, and quietly slipped back to her room, probably thinking she'd just uncovered her golden ticket. The next morning, she was gone. So was my flash drive, and I knew exactly where she went. By noon, my phone rang. It was Margaret again. "Ellen," she said, chuckling, "you'll love this. Guess who just tried to verify their inheritance papers at my office?" I smiled. She didn't. "She did," Margaret said, laughing, "and I told her she'd just presented fabricated legal documents to a state attorney. That's a felony, by the way." I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard, I nearly spilled my coffee. Vanessa had just legally implicated herself using the fake file I had planted. By the evening, Michael showed up again. "Mom, what did you do?" he asked, his tone half shocked, half admiring. I handed him the USB drive I had retrieved from the attorney's office. "She did it to herself," I said calmly. "All I did was give her enough rope to hang her lies." He rubbed his forehead. "She's begging me to bail her out. She says she's sorry, that she'll change." I sighed. People like her don't change. They just adapt. He looked at me for a long time, really looked at me, and said, "You scare me sometimes, Mom." I smiled faintly. "Good. That means you finally understand what I'm capable of." That night, I sat by the fireplace with a glass of wine, staring at the flames. For years, I'd been the forgiving mother, the peacekeeper, the soft-hearted fool. Now, I was something entirely else. Not cruel, not vindictive, just awake. And yet, beneath the satisfaction, something ached. Because revenge might fill the silence, but it doesn't heal the wounds that made it. I thought of Michael, of the boy who used to run to me after nightmares. Now he was a man caught between the mother who raised him and the woman who destroyed him. And deep down, I knew this story wasn't finished yet. Because Vanessa wasn't done.
The call came just after midnight. A trembling voice. "Ellen, please, I need your help." It was Vanessa. For a second, I almost hung up. Then I heard it, sirens in the background. Something was wrong. "They're saying I forged documents," she sobbed. "They said I could go to jail. You have to fix this. You know people. You always fix things." There it was again, that same tone she'd always used when she wanted something. The begging wrapped in entitlement, the desperation laced with manipulation. But this time, her panic was real. I let the silence stretch until she whispered, "Please, Ellen, you're the only one who can save me." "No, Vanessa," I said quietly. "I'm the reason you need saving." And then I ended the call. For weeks, the city buzzed with the story. A young woman accused of falsifying inheritance documents belonging to her husband's wealthy mother. Her photo was everywhere, the perfect Instagram princess turned cautionary tale. Michael came by a few days later, still torn between loyalty and disappointment. He said softly, "They're pressing charges. She's losing everything. Maybe you could ease up?" I looked at him, my son, the boy I once held through nightmares. Now he stood before me, a man drowning in the consequences of loving the wrong person. She mocked me publicly, humiliated me in front of thousands,
Then she broke into my home, stole my files, and tried to use my name for money. This isn't revenge, Michael. This is accountability. He dropped his eyes. She's pregnant, Mom. For a second, the room spun. I hadn't expected that. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Pregnant. That meant there was an innocent life tangled in this web of deceit. I took a deep breath. Then she'd better learn now what kind of mother she'll have to be without lies. That night, I sat alone in my office, the same one she'd snuck into, and pulled out a worn envelope from my desk. Inside were letters, ones I'd written but never sent. To Michael, to myself. One of them read, "You can forgive people, Ellen, but you don't owe them another chance to hurt you." I placed it back in the drawer and poured myself a glass of wine. Maybe this was how justice looked at 63. Lonely, bittersweet, but necessary.
2 months later, I was leaving the courthouse when I saw her, Vanessa. She was thinner, paler, but there was still a flicker of that old arrogance in her eyes. She walked straight toward me, ignoring the cameras flashing nearby. "You win," she hissed under her breath. "Is that what you wanted? You ruined me." I smiled sadly. "You ruined yourself." "You think you're better than me?" she spat. "You're not. You're just old and bitter. You can't stand that Michael loves me." "Love?" I repeated. "You don't love him. You love what he represents. Access, comfort, attention. You never loved anyone you couldn't control." Her eyes filled with tears, not of regret, but fury. "You'll regret this," she said. Maybe I would, but not today. A week later, something unexpected happened. Michael showed up at my door again, with a suitcase. He looked exhausted, defeated. "She's gone, Mom," he said quietly. "She took off last night, left a note. Said she'd never let me or the baby live under your shadow." I stared at him, a mix of heartbreak and relief warring inside me. "And the baby?" I asked. "She lied," he said bitterly. "There's no baby." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. The last thread of sympathy I'd had for her finally snapped. "She used you," I said softly. He nodded. "I know." And I let her. Then he looked at me, eyes glassy, tired. "You were right about her from the start. I just didn't want to see it." I reached out, touched his cheek. "I never wanted to be right, Michael. I just wanted you safe." For the first time in years, he hugged me. A real hug. No resentment, no walls. Just a broken son finding his way back home. But peace has a cruel sense of timing. Because the next morning, I woke to find my phone flooded with notifications. Vanessa was back online. Her account had reappeared, this time posting my address, my photos, my private messages, claiming I'd framed her, ruined her life. Thousands of comments, some sympathetic, most hateful. Within hours, the internet was ablaze. I sat there, staring at my screen. Not angry, not afraid, just tired. I thought it was over, but Vanessa wasn't just vindictive. She was dangerous. So I did the one thing she never saw coming. I went public. That afternoon, I called Margaret, my attorney friend, and we set up an interview with a local station. I sat in front of the camera and told the truth. Every last detail. How I'd bought the house, how she'd stolen from me, how she'd mocked me online, how she'd tried to fake legal documents. I didn't dramatize, I didn't exaggerate, I just spoke
as a mother who'd spent decades protecting her son, only to watch another woman destroy everything she built. The interview aired 2 days later. Within hours, public opinion flipped like a coin. Suddenly, the same internet that mocked me was turning on her. Old screenshots, deleted posts, fake donation schemes, everything resurfaced. Her empire of lies crumbled in real time. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number. "You didn't have to do this." No name, but I knew it was her. I typed back one sentence. "You should have thought about that before you threw the first stone." Then I blocked her. For good. Days passed. Michael began to heal. The silence in my house didn't feel so heavy anymore. I started tending my garden again, watching life bloom from soil that had once been barren. Sometimes revenge isn't about rage, it's about closure, about reclaiming the space someone once poisoned with cruelty. A month later, I received a final envelope in the mail, no return address. Inside, a single photo of Vanessa working at a small diner in another state. On the back, a note. "You got your piece. I hope it was worth it." I traced the words with my thumb, then folded it neatly and placed it in the same drawer as my old letters. Was it worth it? I don't know, but it was over. And for the first time in years, that was enough.
The first morning of real peace came quietly. No notifications, no gossip, no noise. Just the sound of rain tapping against my kitchen window as I poured my first cup of coffee in what felt like forever. I stood there, watching the gray sky roll over the horizon, the smell of fresh coffee wrapping around me like forgiveness. It had been 3 months since the chaos ended. 3 months since I'd last heard Vanessa's voice. 3 months since my son had finally started to smile again. The world had moved on. And finally, so had I. Michael had found a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just quiet. Peaceful. He came by every Sunday for lunch, just like he used to when he was little. We didn't talk much about her. We didn't need to. That chapter was closed. Instead, we talked about his new job, about his therapy sessions, about his plans to maybe, someday, date again. He laughed more now. Really laughed. One afternoon, he looked across the table and said, "Mom, I don't think I ever thanked you for not giving up on me." I smiled softly. "I did, sweetheart. I just didn't let you see it." He looked confused for a second, then chuckled. "You were always honest to a fault." Maybe that's why people like Vanessa hated me, because I refused to lie about who I was or who they were. But healing, I learned, isn't about winning. It's about releasing. I realized that the revenge wasn't what gave me peace. It was the truth that did. When I finally stopped pretending everything was okay, when I stopped protecting people who hurt me, that's when life started breathing again. So, I started writing again. A book. Not about Vanessa, not about betrayal, but about resilience. About the quiet strength of women who have been silenced, mocked, erased, and yet still rise. The first line read, "They called me dramatic, bitter, vengeful. But really, I was just tired of apologizing for surviving." One morning, I received a letter in the mail. This time, it wasn't anonymous. It was from Vanessa. The envelope was simple. No perfume, no sarcasm, no glittery stationery, just plain. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, a short note. "Ellen, I lost everything. I blamed you because it was easier than admitting I was the problem. I don't expect forgiveness, but
I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Vanessa. I stared at it for a long time. I'd imagined this moment so many times, her begging, apologizing, paying the price. But the reality felt different. There was no satisfaction, no joy, just a quiet ache where anger used to live. I folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer as the photo she'd sent before, the diner picture, the cruel message. Because closure isn't always about getting the apology. Sometimes it's about knowing you've outgrown the need for one. 2 weeks later, I visited the old house, the one she used to live in. It had been renovated by the new owners. Bright flowers lined the walkway, the porch freshly painted. Life had returned to it. I stood at the gate for a moment, smiling. That house had once been my battlefield. Now it was someone else's new beginning. And that was enough. When I got home, I found a box on my porch. No label, just a simple note taped to the top. For you. Inside were photos, old family pictures I hadn't seen in years. Michael as a child playing in the yard, my late husband laughing behind the camera, and then near the bottom, a photo of all of us before things went bad, before the lies, before the bitterness. On the back of that photo, someone had written, "You gave him everything he needed to come back home." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature. I knew it was for Michael. I sat on the floor, tears finally falling. Not sad tears, release tears. The kind that come when you realize the storm is finally over. That night, as I sat by the window watching the sunset, I whispered to myself, "You made it, Ellen. You made it through." And for the first time in my 63 years, I didn't feel like the villain of anyone's story. I felt like the survivor of my own. I lit a candle, poured another glass of wine, and wrote the final page of my book. To every woman who's ever been mocked, dismissed, or betrayed, you don't need to burn their world to find peace. Just walk away and build your own. 3 months later, the book hit the shelves. Small launch, quiet reception, but within weeks, something unexpected happened. Letters started pouring in, emails, comments from women all over the world. Your story gave me the courage to leave. I finally stood up for myself after reading your words. Thank you for reminding me it's not too late. Each message was a reminder. My pain had found purpose. My silence had found voice. And maybe, just maybe, that was what it was all for. One evening, while signing copies at a small bookstore, I looked up and froze. There, at the back of the room, Vanessa. She looked different, older, humbled. For a long second, we just stared at each other. Then she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible nod, and walked out without a word. And that right there was the real ending. Not the apology, not the revenge, just mutual recognition that we'd both survived the wreckage of what we once were. When I drove home that night, the city lights blurred against the windshield, and I realized something profound. Revenge started the story, but forgiveness, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need words, was how it ended. When I reached home, I placed my signed copy of the book on my mantle beside a photo of my late husband and son. For the first time in decades, my house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt whole. I smiled, whispering softly to the empty room, "You made it, Ellen. You made it through." And for the first time in my 63 years, I didn't feel like the villain of anyone's story. I felt like the survivor of my own. I lit a candle, poured another glass of wine, and wrote the final page of my book. They called me dramatic, bitter, vengeful, but really, I was just tired of apologizing for surviving. And as the candle flickered out, I knew, truly knew, that I'd won. Not by destroying anyone else's life, but by finally rebuilding my own.